with our first speaker of the evening. He is one of the global pioneers in the blockchain space. He is a builder. He was an architect in the financial sector. He didn't build buildings like IMPay. He built systems within companies like HSBC, where he was the lead architect for their Forex systems. He worked with Commonwealth Bank of Australia, Lloyd's Bank of Scotland, a lot of the big heavyweights, and he took that, but the man had a vision. He could see the future, and in 2013, long before almost anybody in this room had heard the word blockchain, he got in there and founded a company, ANX, and anybody who's in the sector knows ANX and all the companies that came after that, OSL, Octagon, and now he came up through the roots. He put it all together. They were one of the biggest global players. They're headquartered right here in Hong Kong. They make us proud. Whenever I'm a Hong Konger and I travel, they say, "Oh, you're from Hong Kong, right? ANX, right?" And now the BC Group. He was originally the CTO, but in July of this year, he became the CEO of the BC Group. We're thrilled to have him here today. A lot of people in this room know this guy, so let's have a warm round of applause for a friend and a leader in the global community, Hugh Madden. Hugh, bring it!
Classic intro. I'm not sure I can up those energy levels, Andrew. That's just amazing, mate. Right, so I'm really pleased to chat to everyone tonight. Quite a good turnout, and I'm probably not surprised because Libra is drawing enormous attention globally. I wonder if we can start with a question. Hands up if you've read the Libra white paper. 3, 4, 6, 7. Okay. Yeah, so in a way I'm pleased because not too many people can call me out if I'm factual unread. Oh, there we go. I won't dwell there after Andrew's introduction. Most people, I guess, know these days BC Group is a main board listed company in Hong Kong. 2 key subsidiaries, OSL and NexChange, probably familiar brands for this part of the world. So, first of all, I thought I'd start talking about Tether. How about we do another hands up? This is the last one, I promise. Who knows what Tether is? USD, right, here we go. Quite a few. Now, people will often say that Tether started because Bitcoin was too volatile. So let's have a cryptocurrency that's not volatile. And I would say that's absolute rubbish. It's not at all what Tether started. Tether started because banks don't like serving unregulated digital currency exchanges because it's unacceptable money laundering risks. People talk about getting cards. If you're sitting around a table playing cards and you don't know who the patsy is, then it's you. So money laundering risks are much the same. If you're a regulated institution, you've got money laundering obligations, heavy fines if you get it wrong, and you're serving a customer who is not regulated, well, if they get it wrong, whose fault is it? It's yours. So banks weren't particularly worried about cryptocurrency in 2013 when I started. They were very worried about money laundering risks and large fines. And the risk-return equation for offering banking facilities to crypto exchanges wasn't there, and so of course they said no. They said no everywhere. And so thousands of crypto exchanges were trying to start their businesses and they couldn't get banking, but everyone wanted banking. So what happened is the enterprising team, which was separate from Tether at the time, had this idea that they'll launch a token inside Bitcoin, inside what's called Omni. They launch a fully reserved backed token, backed by dollars, and it would allow people to have some form of banking access somehow. So basically, people could buy these tethers. They would be matched to US dollar, and they could go and then buy altcoins, and a year after that, they could go and speculate on ICOs. So this is why Tether came into existence. It's because banking was so hard to get, and all the organizations like Binance could not get banking. Tether was the alternative. So how this structure works, you have Tether traded all over the place on multiple exchanges. The price will go up, the price will go down. In theory, it's just pure supply and demand. But Tether and similar stablecoins, they have special access. If you are someone who's an authorized reseller, you can actually access their banking. So you can send in some tethers to get it burnt and pull out some dollars, or you can send in some dollars and pull out tethers. And you can normally do that at a very small premium or discount. Now, to get that access, to get that special access, your job is to market make. So your job is to go out to all those exchanges, and anywhere where you see a price disparity, tether's going down, it's going up, there's money to be made because you've got special access to the mothership to cash in and cash out your dollars. So they created a financial incentive for market makers to very aggressively open market operations and stabilize the price of the stablecoin in the market. So that's the first step. The second step on the journey was it worked, and it worked for a good 18 months. And the incentives caused the stablecoins to be very, very stable. As a result, people started to use it for more than just speculating on altcoins. Rumours have it there's many capital controlled markets where people are quite happy to use Tether and similar instead of Bitcoin as a way of easily moving money around the world. So trust came out of long-term stability. I was always shocked. Personally, I've always been very, if you look at the legals of Tether, it's not very reassuring as a consumer. So I've always been very reluctant to touch it in any form, frankly. My business partner, his view was that's part of its secret to success. It's like a hot potato. Everyone's happy to use it because they can use it to access exchanges where they can't get banking, but no one wants to hang on to it. You get your Tether, you get your dollars, or you get your Bitcoin, and you get the hell out of it. And that interesting that creates is enormous velocity. So you've got this Tether, this currency, that's got this enormous velocity and it's just flying around the world. And actually that's a very nice feature to have in something that you want to be used. It's got high velocity. And so it became very liquid, high velocity, very stable, and through all sorts of crises. Here it is, it's become an established piece of infrastructure. Maybe it'll go, but there's been a number of large investments trying to knock it off, and no one's managed yet, even though there's from a consumer protection perspective and a legal perspective, there's much better alternatives. So Tether, one thing it definitely proved, these stablecoin things can be a really effective non-bank payment system. It works. Along comes Facebook, particularly a guy called David Marcus, a long-term Bitcoin believer who is the head of Libra. So David Marcus was a Bitcoiner well back in the day, like Peter Thiel. So you've got this Facebook just on the back of massive data privacy issues launching something like this. And so they announced they're launching a stablecoin. And we can get into the nitty-gritty details of that. The reaction, of course, Congress, knee-jerk, you must stop. 2 days of hearings. So David Marcus went in front of Congress and presented quite a lot of things. Most of them, of course, hadn't read the white paper. So first of all, he came in with an approach to try and defame all of the threats, all of the challenges that he would face. He came in, first of all, saying, actually, well, we're not going to control it. So let's talk about the structure of Libra. First of all, you've got a blockchain. Now that blockchain is not controlled or owned by Facebook. They set up an association called Libra, and that association is intended to have up to 100 members. And Facebook says, we are not going to have any special rights. We are only going to be one of those 100 members with no rights above and beyond any of those other 99 members. The next thing they did is they said it's going to be headquartered in Geneva. So it's not even under US jurisdiction. Finally, they said how we're going to interact with it is a US subsidiary called Calibra. So there's an entity in the States called Calibra, which is going around getting regulations around money services. So FinCEN and state-by-state money services licenses, which you would need to do electronic payments like this in the States. Finally, he said there is going to be a firewall between Facebook and Calibra. No data sharing. So all of those privacy issues that you're challenging me with will we're here already, we've written it up. So he came in with the intention to have an answer for all of the challenges that would immediately go and get placed their way. Now, there's a few things here. So, regulators, Facebook privacy. Next one is risks of money laundering. And so let's talk about that. You don't hear so many challenges in recent weeks with regards to Libra and money laundering because of the Financial Actions Task Force. So pretty much most of the major economies in the world, including China, 38 of the largest members, they all belong to an organisation called the Financial Action Task Force. Now this sets the standards and requirements for anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing. That's very influential. The Financial Action Task Force they review the money laundering controls in all the jurisdictions, and then if they're not following recommendations, then they place them on a watch list. Banks refuse to send money there, and that's very damaging for your economy. It's a very influential and powerful organisation. The Financial Action Task Force in June ratified a new set of recommendations. These recommendations were about cryptocurrency. And they said a couple of really important things. The most important, I think, is they said every single member must register and license its virtual asset businesses. So wallet providers, exchanges, brokers. You must license everyone, so mandatory licensing. The next thing they said is you're going to level the playing field. So when we're going to have what's called the travel rule. Now in the banking world, if you send a SWIFT wire cross-border, you must send beneficiary details with it. Who's sending the wire? On the other hand, if you're on the street and you're passing cash to a friend, you don't have any reporting obligations. So the Financial Action Task Force said the same thing was applied for all its jurisdictions for cryptocurrency. If you're a crypto business and you send a withdrawal on behalf of a user to another crypto business, you must, they didn't say how, but you must somehow connect with them, send the beneficiary details and their account identifier. Just like sending a SWIFT cross-border wire with banking. This is a requirement. People are still arguing about this, saying we must get this changed, but I'm afraid if I miss the boat, it's now a requirement. It's formally ratified. But the other thing they said is, but we're not going to do that to peer-to-peer. We're not going to, if you send Bitcoin to a friend, you don't have any reporting obligations. If we did that, we'd have to do the same thing for cash. Now it's a level playing field. A lot of people think the recent price spike in crypto was because of Libra. My view is actually it was because of these FATF requirements. Because it provides the needed clarity that allows regulated asset managers to engage in the asset class, because it adds clarity to who's on the hook for the money laundering startups. As I was saying before, if you don't know whose fault it is, it's yours. If you've got regulated exchanges, you can access the asset class, follow obligations, you're good. But Libra certainly played a large part. On top of that, the news of Libra releasing something as huge as this stablecoin certainly did hurt matters. Now, the reason I gave you that long-winded, boring story about the Financial Action Task Force is because all of the challenges about Libra being used for money laundering, they're already solved. In fact, the FATF officials themselves say this covers Libra. Libra's covered. Money laundering risks are covered, just the same as the banking world. So there's no particular, there is a race for jurisdictions to implement licensing frameworks, but it's basically covered. The issue, instead, is actually more about financial stability. So let's have a talk about that one. The news of Facebook Libra, it's a vertical integration story. That's exactly what it is. It's a vertical integration story. As I've said for many years, my own 20 years in the banking environment, I always said, guys, we've already lost the battle. When you look at the value chain, it's the last mile relationship. Who owns the relationship with the customer? We've already lost. When I was with the banks, we've already lost that battle. Lost it. Now, Facebook, just like the other things, it owns that relationship. It owns the last mile. They don't care. And the interesting thing about those, currently about 38, I believe, expected to be 100 members of of the Libra's association. There's not a single bank. There's not a single bank in that membership. And that is very telling. Because what Libra does, it completely disintermediates banks. If you go and look at a banking model, three main sources of revenue. You've got transaction fees, you've got net interest margins, and then you've got broadly classified as investment banking or advisory fees. So what Libra does is it takes away the transaction fees, and it might have some very interesting and unexpected side effects. So in this kind of thought experiment, we said, look, let's imagine Amazon-like spending habits, only 20% of Facebook's user base. So we're looking at 292 billion, which immediately puts it in a similar category as the top 5 banks globally. Although I would say perhaps even more powerful, aside from that last mile relationship I was talking about. And that's because banks are fractional. So if you look at a bank, anywhere from 6 to 13% of its balance sheet is backed with government bond lending, but high quality securities. In Libra's white paper, they've said they're full reserve, not fractional at all. So if my experiment is too small, if the sort of funds under management that Libra starts to handle, if that's much, much larger, it's going to have some really strange effects because it's one-to-one invested back into bonds. So the way, actually I'll probably skip that part. So as people onboard onto Libra, typically a stablecoin then turns around, puts all the money in the bank. Some of the newer ones, they've gotten a bit savvier as they've grown large, and they've started using government securities. So the terms and conditions typically say it's going to be some cash, the rest is going to be in high quality government debt. And government debt in some scenarios has a coupon and interest flows. So then what they said is now there's going to be these security tokens, the topic of the next conference by the sounds of it. There's going to be these security tokens which they're registered securities, they're equity instruments, and they'll pay a dividend, and that dividend will be the pro rata of the interest flows. So they've kind of created this big investable bank that will come in and buy the security tokens to own a part of the network and receive a portion of funds from those interest flows. And of course, regulated in that sort of an instrument, it would definitely be very professional and not open to retail. But all the same, it will be massively popular. So you've got this thing which has got the ability to draw in enormous amounts of capital, and it's going to turn around and invest that capital in government securities. They're also going to determine which government securities. So they've started out by saying it's 50-50. It's going to be half US dollars, and we're going to invest it in a basket otherwise. And this is one part of the paper which isn't strong because normally, like the IMF or something, you would want. So the IMF is a world organisation that has what's called special drawing rights. There's like a super currency which is made up of sovereign currencies, basically prorated by trade volumes. So and this is exactly what Libra's doing. Now they've said it's 50-50 to start with, but the association itself, headquartered in Geneva, it's going to make the decisions. It's going to decide what that ratio is. So if this thing grows large, and in some cases it's large enough that it impacts interest rates in the jurisdictions because it's so big and because it's all being invested in government debt, it's going to have very unexpected consequences. So this starts to be financial stability. Privacy, they'll never stop talking about it, but frankly regulators don't seem to be as interested in privacy as they do with everything else. Money laundering is pretty much covered already, I think, from the Financial Action Task Force. Financial stability, every conversation with a regulator or a minister, in my experience, ends up financial stability when it comes to Libra. And you can see why regulators worldwide started to react so quickly. So, reacting they are. Financial Action Task Force has already been ratified and has already given its members 12 months to implement licensing. So licensing is here, it's coming. What happened in Japan? So in Japan, when licensing was introduced, it's like a double-edged sword. On the one hand, the regulator is concerned about consumer protection, wants to get this thing under control. On the other hand, as soon as they provide clarity by regulating it, it allows people to engage. And then engage they do. So in Japan, sort of 450% growth in volumes, pre and post regulations, whilst the rest of the world only grew at 18%. There's very clear evidence of what happens when you introduce licensing clarity around digital assets. So, that said, licensing is coming. A lot of people in the industry, they like to debate whether or not Libra is a true cryptocurrency or not. But even if they don't think it's a true cryptocurrency, very typically they'll say, but it's really making a lot of people take cryptocurrency as a serious asset. It's not going away. And it's certainly bringing a lot of attention and growth and capital flows and projects to the space. Finally, it's an enormous experiment. Bitcoin was already an enormous experiment. And now having someone the size of Facebook implementing a currency, just some of the scenarios, like how it could impact interest rates, but in a like cross-border, online, global community manner, it's very much an experiment. So I guess I hope that wasn't too dry for you. Probably more regulations and banking and ratios than anything else, but I think if there's any questions, we'll probably take them after the panel.
That's exactly the plan. Thank you very much for that.